Day one of training camp at Ohio State is in the books. Lettermen Row was on site for all of it. The 40-year vet Tim May was there to open his 40th season covering the Buckeyes. Andy Backstrom was there. Spencer Holbrook was there. Just the 5th season for me. It's the preseason report presented by Buyers.
They're adding up fast, man.
It's the preseason report presented by Buyers Auto. The gang's all here, and let's talk about the Buckeyes after watching the full practice. Thanks, Ohio State, letting us watch full practice. We'll take what we can get. Tim,
Okay.
biggest takeaway?
Yeah, the biggest takeaway is what everybody's asking about. Who's the number one quarterback? It looked to me like Cal McCord took the first snaps with the first team when they first rolled out there. Ladies and gentlemen, they didn't have pads, or they didn't have most of their pads on. This was not real football. This was barely even touch football, but they were out there on the field. But it does matter who's going first and who's going second. So it looked like Cal McCord was going first, and Devin Brown was going second, but they interchanged.
Yep.
Just like Ryan Day said they would. They even, when they were taking practice snaps from underneath center, they even practiced taking snaps from Jacob James and Carson Hinsman. Each one took turns.
Yeah.
So, they're keeping it pretty cagey right now. The most telling moment, in a bad way for poor Devin Brown, was he threw an interception in one of the skill sessions, and next thing you know, he's running by you because he had to run a lap around the field.
It was a pick six at that too.
He had to run a lap around the field because of that error. Ryan Day is not joking about keep throwing the ball to your own team.
Yeah, defensively, we kind of see some things take hold in the secondary at least, and Jim Knowles was quite honest with us about who was playing together and where, and it looked like we saw the safety trio of Jahad Carter out there along with Sonny Styles and Lathan Ransom, and so that group was together a lot today, and Jim Knowles all but confirmed that group is together almost with this first team defense right now. And at corner we saw a lot of Davison Igbinosun and Denzel Burke as well. So we're kind of seeing this defense take hold already. Things can change, of course, but that's a little good freeze frame, if you will, right now.
Yeah, it was interesting. Knowles was asked about his starting corners already, and he just said yes with Jordan Hancock and Denzel Burke. And so a lot of these questions are being solved already, and it's like, okay, well, what are we going to do the rest of the month? Because if the defense is already set, and we know the offensive pieces. Well, the offensive pieces are not set though, and that's where I'm getting to. Is the offensive line was my big takeaway. I am ready to rule Victor Cutler out of the center battle. We had 2 guys taking first team reps, 2 guys taking second team reps. It was Carson Hinsman, it was Jacob James. I think those are the 2 biggest competitors for that center job, and that's nothing to take away from Victor Cutler, but I saw it in the spring when Carson Hinsman was taking a lot of first team reps with Jacob James on the sideline, and then Jacob James comes in and immediately is in that first and second group. I think that makes this a two-person battle. If I'm wrong, I'll admit that I'm wrong, but day one tells me a lot about the center battle. And then you go out to tackles. Zed Mahalski taking first team reps. You had Luke Montgomery taking some second team reps. The constant was Josh Fryer, and I'm not ready to plant my flag and say Josh Fryer's going to start at left tackle, but the flag's in the hand, and it's got a point at the end. So all I have to do is jab it in the ground. So I think
Baker.
Yeah, exactly. So the one thing that I think is interesting about this offensive line is that Josh Simmons did not have a great first day, but I also am willing to give him a pass because this is his first ever official practice at Ohio State. There's got to be a little bit of nerves that come with that. There's got to be a little learning Justin Fry as a practice coach, not just a summer workout coach. There's got to be a little just general nerves to having your first day at Ohio State when you've been at San Diego State. So we'll hold off on making any assessments on that offensive line except for its center, maybe left tackle. But I think those are my big takeaways. And full disclosure for those at home, I was ticking the offense. Andy was ticking the defense. Tim just had eyes in the sky on everybody. So
I'm like Ryan Day, I'm Roman.
Yeah. So we kind of had it all covered. But that's why Andy's doing defense and I did some offensive stuff too.
Yeah. I think it's really early on this offensive line assertion, but ascertainment, whatever word you want to use, because like you said, Josh called me Jimmy Simmons. He's only been around here for a little while.
Yep.
He looks the part. There's no doubt about it. And Tegra Shabola looks the part, no doubt about it. But it's funny because, the last several times we talked about offensive line stuff, I don't think we even said Zen Mikulski.
And then he's out there with the first team.
Well, yeah, but the more you talk about this football team, the more guys you leave out that you intended to talk about, but somebody else caught your eye. But the fact that Zen was out there with the first team for the first few run-throughs and kind of stayed that way as practice evolved, I think says a lot about that. The center situation, yeah, it was exactly what I expected to be Carson Hinsman and Jacob James, but I'm not ruling Victor Cutler out of competition there. But Jacob James obviously missed the spring. He's back out there. Everybody was talking about him being the possible heir apparent to Luke Whippler. Now you've got a little battle on your hands, and I thought he looked pretty good, but so did Carson Hinsman. So
yes.
Left tackle, Josh Fryer seems like the guy, but Luke Montgomery, the more you see him, the more you like him. I know that's the same way with Justin Fry, and so it'll be interesting as this month goes on.
I'm gonna add one more name into that mix. I thought was impressive on day one. Maybe it's just because he's got a pep in his step, and in year two of just being in the offense, I thought George Fitzpatrick had a pretty good day.
Yeah.
And that's a guy who doesn't get talked about very often at all.
It's
a guy
like 100 names, though.
He kind of gets lost in that shuffle a little bit of, okay, who could play tackle? Like, I'm not going to be surprised if at the end of this month if George Fitzpatrick is on the 2 deep. Where that is, couldn't tell you. But
this is so early.
It's just a slow. It could be a slow build for him. I just think there's intriguing names there, Tim, beyond just the obvious culprits. But
like I told you guys, I'm more interested in getting to watch that full practice on August the 11th when we'll see them in full pads playing real football to a certain extent. I think that's going to be much more of a telling of the tale when they're going against Jack Sawyer, Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, and JT Tuimoloau.
Speaking of that defensive line, Andy, I peek over at that defensive individual drills. I see Tyleik Williams over there, goes down. Could just be a first day, little ailment. Tywone Malone immediately in there, getting some reps. I think that's a guy in the mix probably, but that defensive line looks like it's ready to take the step that we know that this team needs from it this fall.
Yeah, the linebackers spoke about that today, that this defensive front, they think it's the best in the country. It could be, potentially. There's a lot of depth, especially on the interior, the 3-tech position. And you mentioned Tywone Malone, just looks like someone who has already played college football. He comes in looking like a real body, not someone that needs to be treated like a freshman or someone who needs to be ushered in. He was really a big part of this practice today, even on day one. And right as Tyleik needed a little bit of time to work on his right knee, he was back into practice later, but Tywone was taking those reps with the first team guys, if you will, with Jack.
Amazing. Not amazing. It is interesting. He was the next man up.
Yes, the next man up situation. So, along with Mike Hall inside there. And Ty Hamilton was still in that mix as well. It's not so black and white, but there they are in the middle of that defensive front with Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau on the edge. And speaking of that edge position, Kenyatta Jackson, we saw in the spring, but even today still he looks the part. Ryan Day said he looks like an NFL player, and I think we all believe him right now. He just looks really good. And same thing goes for Amari Abork, just another big guy.
All right.
By the way, I wanted to ask around out there and ask Joe Philbin, who's the quality control guy, whatever title he's got here, former NFL head coach. I remember on Hard Knocks when he was with the Dolphins, and they had kind of a swinging gate there with some players and stuff. And I'm just wondering, how does he compare this talent that he's watching on this football field? Because I'm telling you, there's a lot of talent out there.
There's some NFL talent out there. Yeah.
Exactly, compared to maybe the last that team he had with the Dolphins. It just didn't quite get it done. It's got to be an eye opener even for a guy like that.
All right, Andy, we're going to give him the floor. I'm just going to let him go.
What?
It's a certain running back out there, Tim, back on the field. I'm going to let you talk about him.
Travion Henderson, ladies and gentlemen, 95. He didn't get to play, of course, against Georgia. I think Travion Henderson's ready to go. And another guy I've got my eye on who didn't get to play at all last year was a guy named Evan Pryor, who I thought he looked good for his first real full-speed action that we've gotten to watch.
I would agree with that.
Since he suffered that catastrophic knee injury almost this time a year ago. And me and my friend here, Spencer Holbrook, all-seer of all things, all-seeing, all-knowing.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate that. Somebody finally acknowledges it.
He thinks Dallin Hayden brings as much to the table as Evan Pryor does. I'm just answering your question for you. And I'm just going, all 5 of those guys are different, man. Chip Traynham has a look about him. Dallin Hayden, I'm telling you, every time you've gotten to see Dallin Hayden do something in the spring and even today, it is full speed.
It looks different, Tim.
He looks different. He looks bigger. He looks faster. He looks more assured of what he's doing. And, you know, of course, I didn't even mention Mayan Williams. Everybody kind of gasped when he had to go and get his, I think it was his right ankle retaped early in practice. Was that was just because you can get a bad tape job, you know. But he was out there running around and stuff. And I stick by my guns here, my assertions here, that they've got the best running back room, top to bottom, and the best wide receiver room, top to bottom, of anybody in the country.
So
That's not gushing. That's just observation.
Tim, I didn't say that this was going to be a segment of people who caught your eye, but I think that does sum up that part of it. And I'll get back to you, a couple more guys who caught your eye. But Andy, you had, again, full eyes on the defense. Just a few guys that caught your eye as you were just watching, because like the observations in this day one are just as important as anything of just who's gotten bigger, who looks faster, who looks stronger, those kind of things. I mean, which of these guys do you think are worth mentioning on the show today?
Yeah, I mean, I think one guy that just needs to be mentioned is Lorenzo Styles Jr., and just considering that he's already playing corner reps. Sometimes when someone switches positions like that, you don't know how quickly they're going to be really pushed into those drills. And he was being, fully ushered into that practice point. And I felt like he did a pretty good job handling himself. And we also saw him on special teams returning punts, and that's somewhere that Ryan Day mentioned he could play right away, at least on special teams in some capacity. And so that would be interesting to see play out. Anything on the defensive line I thought was intriguing. At linebacker, we saw Court Williams playing linebacker, switching over from safety. He was a captain last year and had multiple labrum injuries that required surgery. He said he had 3 separate ones. And so now he is back. He says he feels better than ever. It's going to be hard for him to see the field, considering this is a 2 linebacker system.
I think.
Yeah. I'm going to write a little piece about him just right after we're done, just because. Why? You know, what drives a guy after you've been through this gauntlet of injuries to want to be back out there, to want to be part of the mix, you know? And he had some pretty good answers to that. But, you know, how much he's going to figure into it when you look at C.J. Hicks sitting there that they want to get on the field. You know, obviously, Steele Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg.
Cody Simon.
Cody Simon, you know.
Looked really good today.
Do not sleep on that young man. I tried to give Tommy Eichenberg a joke, but he didn't quite go over. Who has 2 healed thumbs and plays linebacker, you know. Because now he's got his thumbs back under him, so to speak.
I'll give that joke this, too.
I thought it was pretty funny. I mean, it was apropos. But the bottom line is, it's just Court wants to be part of the mix, you know, captain and stuff. He just wants to be part of it. And you've seen these guys, man. It's hard to step away from football.
A couple other, just walking out of the tunnel, I thought Hero Canoe looks a lot bigger. And I think Arvell Reese, I'm not allowed to swear on this show, so I won't use the middle word there.
Yeah.
You can just put it in yourself. He's a grown man. Like, Arvell Reese looks like a junior in college.
We can't say ass on this show.
All right, he's a grown-ass man, Tim.
Yeah, I think that's what Urban Meyer called it.
Yeah, I keep it for the kids, though.
They say that on television all the time now.
It's a family program, Tim.
Yeah.
Offensively, guys, I'm going to break some news here. The freshman wide receivers are so good. And it's very hard to say that about freshman wide receivers when right before they run a route, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka run a route. But I'm here to tell you, they do not look like freshmen. They do not play like freshmen. They will play on the field like they are not freshmen. Carnell Tate is very good at this. Brandon Ennis is his first day out there. He does not look like he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't look like this is too big for him. He already is at 207 pounds according to the roster, and he looks that. Those two specifically, and I think Noah Rogers and Bryson Rogers have a real chance at some point, but those two specifically, I don't know how it happens because of the talent ahead of them with Xavier Johnson, with Julian Fleming, Emeka Egbuka, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jaden Ballard, if he can put it all together like we think maybe he can. I don't know how it happens, but Carnell Tate and Brandon Ennis are already good at this. And that tells me something about what the rest of August is going to hold.
Okay, Ohio State may or may not go undefeated. It may or may not win the Big Ten. It may or may not win the college football national title. The last 4 team college football playoff. But they are loaded, as I said earlier, at wide receiver. Just watching Carnell Tate do his thing in an isolated base. Then watching Brandon Ennis, guy we hadn't really seen until today from the standpoint of on campus doing things. And they're not even, I guess they're second team. It could be second team. Maybe.
I think they'll be closer to the second team by September 2nd than maybe.
Is, stupid crazy. I can say that on this show, right?
Yep.
It's stupid crazy the depth that they've got at wide receiver. I mean, outstanding players who could play anywhere in the country. And Alabama may come calling again, in the offseason. Who knows? They may need another Jameson Williams.
Yeah, Andy, I know those guys stick out. You locked in on the defense again, but like those guys still stood out. And it had to. I mean,
well, 100%. And I feel like we've seen this time and time again with Ohio State that the wide receivers who really become stars here make an impact as a freshman in some way or another. Maybe it's late in the season, maybe it's just in a bowl game, but there's something that you see from them in their first year. And so I think without a doubt, in some way, those two guys, Carnell Tate and Brandon Inniss, will have some kind of impact on this team at some point this year.
If you can't tell, we're a little excited to break down the Buckeyes. We will have full coverage of this open practice that just took place behind us at LettermenRow.com, where we do this 365 days a year. The 40-year vet Tim May will be there. Andy Baxter will be there. I will be there. Go to LettermenRow.com right now. You can get $1 for a month. 1 month of coverage to LettermenRow.com. 1 month of the access to the Letterman Lounge message board, where we're always kicking it for $1. Hell of a deal, if I do say so myself. Again, for Tim May, for Andy Backstrom, I am Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the Preseason Report presented by Byers Auto. We will see you back in this very building on Saturday for another edition of this fine show.